has the responsibility for learning? It's the students. Okay? You don't have responsibility for, in a sense, teaching, if you think of teaching as telling. The responsibility in the classroom for learning and for achieving the learning outcomes belongs to the student. Your responsibility, or our responsibility as teachers, is to facilitate it, make it happen, make it possible for that to happen. But you could be the best facilitator in the world. Okay? We're talking about, this is very different from manufacturing widgets. If you have a perfect process and you do it right, the widgets come out right. Okay? But we're working with human beings. So you could have a perfect curriculum, a perfect process. You could be the perfect facilitator. And I, as a learner, can say, I want nothing to do with it. I will not learn. I will not do what it takes to learn. I have that choice. Okay? So they need to understand, we make this shift. They need to understand that they need to accept this responsibility for their own learning. Okay? So they can't come back and say, I didn't do well because you didn't teach right. You didn't teach me. It's, I have to learn. And sometimes we have to learn in spite of the instructor. And we probably have all been in those. Okay? The point is that the focus is on learning. What I'm doing as a student, not what the instructor. Now, is that important? Of course it's important. How you help students learn is terribly important. Okay? But the real responsibility, so they need to be self-directed. Do they come to you that way? Absolutely not. Okay? So we'll see there'll be a shift in that. They come to you very dependent on you, the instructor, any field, and some of it by age. You know, if you look at the first, second, third, fourth semesters, it has to do with that. And they're going to be dependent on you. But by the time they're 9th and 10th semester, they shouldn't be dependent on you for getting information. You no longer are the sole place of information for them. They should have become very independent, so they can find the information they need on their own. They know where to go, they know where to look, they know where the resources are. Okay? When you're looking at activities and projects, organize them around real-world problems. Always keeping in mind, of course, the first rule is that you have to keep them safe. You have to keep students safe. Keep yourself safe, keep students safe. So where you may want to do some real-world problems, you're studying the causes of a certain disease, you don't put them in the incubation tent and say, all right, let's try to figure out what that disease is. Don't come back and tell me, but just figure it out. Keep them safe, keep yourself safe, keep other people safe. But make them real-world problems. Somebody in the world, someplace in the profession actually does this. And focus on authentic skills. This is the place early on to start them to learn collaboratively, to work in groups. So your role changes to that as facilitator. Okay. So what I'm doing right now, as a matter of fact, and what I'll be doing a lot this week, okay, is I'm sharing information with you. Okay. Is there learning going on? I don't know. I don't know yet. And I won't be able to tell. If all I do is talk to you all week, the only thing I will know for sure is that I've had one more chance to practice. I know it better on Friday than I did on Monday. And that's really not what's important, that I go home knowing it better than when I started. Okay? So I can't talk to you, now, given the fact I'm only going to be with you a week, and there's probably a lot of information to share, I will probably be doing a lot of information sharing all week. But I want you to see the difference between this is not necessarily a good learning situation. Unless I can, one, give you a lot of practice, give you a chance to articulate, to say and explain the ideas to each other, to me. Okay. And I have some way of knowing for each one of you if you reach those objectives that we set at the beginning of the afternoon. That's a teaching learning situation. So I'm not promising that's what these are going to be. I can promise you that if we were an entire semester together, I would be doing, over the semester, a lot less talking and a lot more facilitating. Okay? But just so that you recognize, now, is this, and you say, oh, does this mean we can't ever? We do a lot of lectures. Does this mean that lectures are not important and they're not, no, if they're well done, they're absolutely wonderful and efficient ways of sharing information. Okay. So we have to get better at lectures as well. Okay. But I want you, if you present a paper at a conference, you're sharing information. It's not a teaching learning situation. You say, yeah, but they learned something from my paper. Yeah, but only if, how do you know? You have no way of knowing that. Okay. They only learn it, one, if they've had a chance to talk to someone else about it, if they had a chance to discuss it with you, if it's prompted them to think about what they already know and resolve the conflict of this new information, okay, just to know that sometimes our roles will change. And I don't want you to think, okay, does this mean every course in the curriculum now is a project? You say, yes, every course is a project. Okay, well, how many semesters do you think it will take for students to complete the program? Probably 20 courses. Okay? They're not very efficient. They're very effective, but not very efficient. Okay? So every course is not going to be a project-based course. But even within lecture courses, we have to think about, can I do a small project, even if we don't do it together in class? Even if it's something that students get together and do, just so that they're involved in the planning. Now, when you're looking at the curriculum, in terms of the professional practice, and this is one of the principles of the CDIO, says that one of the best practices in CDIO says that in your curriculum, you should have at least, you should have 2 or more project design implement experiences. One at a basic level, one at an advanced level. So that's the minimum. But what we also say is put one in early and try to have one each year. So every 2 semesters. And they build in complexity. And again, no matter what the profession is, start with a small project, simple, short amount of time, small groups or teams of 2, and build up through the whole program till finally at the end you have something that looks very much like the profession. With the size groups that you have in your profession and how professionals work together, doing the service that your professionals do or building the kinds of things they do, okay? And very complex. But you don't start complex, yes?
Because I have a question about these projects. Do you think that is it a good practice that more than one course gets together in building only one project? I mean, or it should be just one project per course?
Capstone courses.
There are a variety of ways of linking them, and actually on tomorrow afternoon, we'll look at some sample ways to link them. And many times you can do that. You can have more than one. You can have, if you have more than one course, they could each have their own project. You could have 2 different courses, but they share a project. And some of the ways of doing that, we'll see some in diagram form. For example, and this is one at MIT, there's students, 2 different groups of students now, 2 different instructors, And one is teaching biology to a group of students. The other one is teaching mechanical engineering to a group of students. And for 75% of the curriculum of the semester, they each do their separate. Biology with the biology teacher, mechanical engineering. And then for the last fourth of the semester, students and instructors all meet together and they work on a project in biotechnology, biological engineering. Right? So it takes the mechanical engineering, it takes the biology, and they work on a project that takes those two instructors and it takes all of those students. Sometimes you work it out that, again, those two courses, but there's a lab time that runs the whole semester, and sometimes the biology students are in the lab working on the project. So it's just a question of when you thread it through the semester, and can work that way. A lot of it depends on resources and how flexible your schedule is for scheduling things, scheduling groups of students together, and how willing those instructors are to come up with a common project.
The main problem is the instructors, the teacher.
The instructors. Yeah.
The teacher, they combine it.
Yeah. But I would start with, if that's too much of a change to do biology and engineering, start with two different engineering. Because the other thing that we do, again at MIT, sometimes the way you combine courses, at MIT, well, students in their first year do not select their career. So when they come into MIT, they have a common curriculum. They don't choose their career until what would be your third semester. Okay. So we might call them the first year. So in their first experience in aerospace engineering, that first year, so they're second year students, in that first year, they take a course that's called unified engineering, and you may do something like that. But in that same group of students, big group of students, 70, 75 students. Okay. But there are about at least five instructors. And they don't all teach at the same time, sure. But in that course, they do fluid mechanics, they do some introduction to computer software, they do the basics of thermodynamics, signals and systems, and they take their turn. So it's like, 9 weeks of, there are two instructors. It's a scheduling nightmare, but so it's this block of time. So the students are really engaged in 2 hours, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think it's a 2-hour block. So it's like a double course. They get twice as many. It's like getting credit for 2 courses. But on Friday, there's what they call a systems problem. They go to the lab, they do systems, and depending on what combination of engineering courses they're taking at that time, that project is a combination. So they might do a little bottle rocket. Now, this is when I exhibit my lack of knowledge of engineering. Okay, I do know there's a bottle rocket experiment, but I'm not quite sure which disciplines are involved in doing that. So there's different ways of linking those. Okay. But the important thing is, you begin now not only to teach them the skills of their profession, what about those other skills? Communication, teamwork, ethical conduct in working with others. Okay? This is a wonderful opportunity to build this in to this lab and project experience. And you do it, again, right from the start. And just as you take your skills and your concepts in your discipline and you try to break it down so it goes from simple to complex, do the same thing with those other skills. You have to try to decide, all right, communication. Let's say I'm doing oral communication, and I want to do written. You don't start them with the hardest thing to do in oral communication, okay? Or particularly in writing. maybe you want to get them to write a report in Spanish before you get them to write one in English. But you don't start with, here's this major research paper, this is your second semester. Maybe it's a lab report, small. The next time they have to do one, a little bit more complex, till finally at the end, when they're in their capstone project, they know how to do a major technical report. Okay, so what I would like you to do, and then this will take us into the coffee break, is to describe or think about, in your profession, can you describe at least one basic and one advanced project or experience that your students do within your profession? Okay? And then what are the challenges for trying to do that, do these experiences with students? And do you have any evidence at all that these experiences work? That there's any benefit to anyone, to the students, to you, to the program in doing them? Okay? So let me have you talk about that, and then are we, Gonzalo, are we leaving the room for coffee, or are we just getting up and...
it's coming.
Oh, coffee will come to the room?
Coffee,
Perfect.
juice
And then we can...
tenemos café aquí, pero ya vienen unos jugos y
Los sándwiches y los ponemos.
los sándwiches no, ya vienen los sándwiches, pueden pedir sándwiches de lo que quieran. Quiero hacer pasé un papelito por aquí. El 20 de julio vamos a trabajar. He encargado almuerzos para que los traigan aquí a la universidad, pero necesito saber exactamente quiénes van a almorzar, porque no pueden sobrar ni tampoco pueden faltar. Después, 20 de julio estamos aquí aislados, no hay nada más.
Si sobran no hay problema, eso nos ocupamos. No se podía hacer un problema.
¿Ah?
Si sobran, nos ocupamos de eso. Si falta, entonces podría haber un problema.
Muy antipatriótico, ¿no?
Yes.
Por la tarde, ¿no? Ay, hubo arboleda.
Para el ingreso el miércoles, ustedes dejan...
Miércoles ya están, todos los que están anotados en el curso ya tienen